Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of W Talks. It's been a while, but we're back, and we're coming back strong. And I'm actually doing it solo today. I've taken over the show. I've locked Kershad away. No, I'm just joking. He's just he's just quite busy, and the timings didn't work out. But he'll be in our hearts for the rest of this episode. And today I have the privilege, the honor, if you'd like, of interviewing a good friend of mine, a general, all-round, fantastic human being, Hassan Khan. Hassan, hi.
Hi, John. How are you, mate?
Honestly, I'm fantastic now that I'm on this call with you. There
Good,
we
good.
go.
Where do we find you in the world these days, John?
I don't know. Actually, I should know. I'm in London, but with calls all over the place, it doesn't really feel like it. And what about you, Hassan? I know you were in London, but where are you now?
Well, ironically, I'm actually in Pakistan, back when my life and my story started, really. So I find myself 30 or 40 years behind the time, so to speak, particularly if you consider where I live and where my family live back home. So yeah, after the virus, I've come back home for a few months.
Mm. And actually, I mean, let's just dive straight into it, Has. I mean, I think you're like a famous football player, right? You do some sort of sport. No, I'm just kidding. So you're um, an absolutely astounding cricketer, one which I've actually had the pleasure of playing with at Metro Blind Sports Blind Cricket Team. How did you get started, Hassan? Tell me about your personal story, how you lost your sight, just what makes you a Hassan.
What makes me Hassan? Well, I mean, that question is still asked amongst my friends, my enemies, and what have you. But I'll try to clear it all up for you, John. Basically, the story begins in Pakistan, in a village outside Multan, which you wouldn't have heard of. It's probably the seventh biggest city in the country. The only thing I know about that city, or knew about that city, was that it's 50 degrees in the summer. The mangoes are phenomenal, and that's the only thing I could tell you about that city. So in 1989, one dim, dark morning, I woke up and my parents had discovered that I couldn't see out of one eye. Now they were teenagers themselves, and obviously this set off panic stations, and we found ourselves straight into hospitals. Within, well, I'd say 24 hours, I'd lost sight in both of my eyes. So here we were in the middle of nowhere, with not a lot of education, definitely no medical care to sing home about, and suddenly these teenagers have a blind child on their hands. And as you can imagine, this didn't just damage my life or damage my eyes. This actually was going to devastate and damage, well, a generation, so to speak, because that's what I was made to believe. Um, and and do feel free to cut in because I can talk for Africa. Absolutely, I can just
No, no,
carry on
go
and on, John.
go for it.
But
Just please go on.
yeah, so the next 6 years, John, were probably like, Jin, was the worst 6 years of my life. I mean, I was imprisoned for a crime I hadn't committed. I honestly felt like that. It was horrible. You know, you had one TV channel that was on air for like at night for a couple of hours. You didn't really have much going on radio. I didn't go to school because the nearest school was about a 6-hour drive for blind people. You certainly wouldn't put a blind child who just lost his sight into a mainstream school. Um, I was just like I guess like a loose button going round and round in a washing machine, and no one knew what to do with me. I mean, I would sit there and people would talk about me like I never existed. I've heard people say, when he grows up and his parents pass on, he's going to be a beggar. And I swear to you, even at the age of 5, I'd just sit there and I'd be like, that's actually my reality. That's my reality. And I would cry my eyes out. Um, the other thing is that I was very, very, very bad mannered, tempered. And because, well, I'd lost my sight. I'd lost my parents in that my parents had passed me on to my grandparents because, well, they were teenagers. And in my head, I probably blamed them for it. But this child had just lost his parents, lost his sight, lost his life, lost his education. My only hobby for the day was to go down to the local corner shop if I was lucky. That was my reality. And and of course, living in the slums of Pakistan, the air, the dangers for a blind and partially sighted person was just horrific. To top it off, you don't have, you don't have the friendship of other people because you're blind. You certainly do not take part in the main sport that is played in that country because, well, you simply cannot pick up a bat because you're blind. You simply cannot kick a ball because you're blind. It's frowned upon. You just don't do it. And well, I gave up, and that was it. That was my life. In fact, when people would play cricket, I would never ever go anywhere near a pitch. What I would do though, John, I would actually. So we had walls with holes for ventilation because it's a hot country. So I'd tuck a newspaper into these holes, and I'd pretend I'm commentating on the game, and I'd pick up the game by the sounds. But again, I was still that lost blind child sitting in the corner talking nonsense. And until further tragedy hit our family. So 6 years after I'd lost my sight, my sister, at the exact same age, had a migraine attack and lost half of her sight. So, it's not all miserable, I promise you. But right now, these were the worst times of our lives, and I just could not fathom what was happening. To top it off, I'd made my first friend, so to speak, and he was from a poorer background. And that very same day that we became friends, right? I'd invited him to my house, and this is an important story because it somehow relates to my life. I'd invited him to my house. He'd come in and he was embarrassed because, well, they lived in a mud hut, and he was embarrassed and he wanted to go home and play cricket with his friends. I knew it. And when he left later that evening, I'd heard that he went and played cricket with his friends and slipped and fell into a river and drowned. In the next 2 weeks.
Oh my God. Wow.
Well, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And the way it relates to my life is that in the next 2 weeks, that 6 or 7-year-old just blamed himself for being slightly richer than that family, for being blind, for being misfortunate, everything. And obviously, that family had lost their 6-year-old, and it was devastating. And that really was the last episode that played out in Pakistan, because then my parents decided that it was time to sail the ship and try our luck somewhere else, and go to England. And in 1995, probably like June or July, I found myself in the European city, or not so European now, England.
Hassan, go on. Please,
You want me to ask? Okay. Well,
I mean, it's one of those things where it's almost like the questions don't even need to come out, because your story in England and your growth here and the work that you've done with the visually impaired community, let's talk about that. I mean, just to sort of not sidetrack this, but to give some context. In our previous episodes of, W Talks, I mean, obviously we had a lot of people with sight loss, but a lot of them were very fortunate to have been born in a sort of economically developed country where sight loss was understood. But you're almost very unique in this situation where you are born into a situation which, even without sight loss, is one that's difficult to live with, let alone one which doesn't really, adapt or consider the needs of people that are visually impaired. So it's such a sort of raw story. It is what it is almost. There's no sugarcoating what it is. Losing your sight at an age somewhere like England is tough enough, let alone losing it in a place where people just didn't understand what to do with you. I mean, it's fascinating. But I want to hear your story in England and how you got to where you are, basically.
Right. So, I mean, once I'd arrived into England, I remember landing into Heathrow and realizing that my life was about to change dramatically. I couldn't be that bad-tempered child who'd thrown not his toys because I didn't have them, but everything else that came my way out of not his pram because he didn't have a pram. But you're following my trail here. I was misfortunate in every way possible, and that's what I told myself. And I thought, here's an opportunity for you to do something. And I heard people speaking English, and I was like, what, 9 by now, and I'd never been into school. Arriving into England, my parents had found a school for me, and the first day I went into school, it's a Linden Lodge school in Wimbledon, Southfields. London, Southwest London boy. And we went into that school, and the teacher wrote my name in Braille. And I remember taking this piece of paper away, and I stuck it on a sweatshirt, and it said Hassan, and that's of course my name. And those 6 initials and those 6 letters changed my life, because I laid there that evening in bed and just kept reading, reading and reading. I was like, this is the power of education. This will now take you to your next step. This is a ladder. Now, can you do it? Can you do it? And I said to my parents, I said, I know we're immigrants and whatever we're called in this country, but if the Queen wants to send you home, great, because I'm not going back. You might as well chuck me into the Thames. I've now got an opportunity, and I'm going to take full opportunity. And if I don't, then I failed myself. I failed you, and I failed every single person who called me a beggar. And from that day on, I just knuckled down. I was probably the first child in that school to fight the council and the government to be allowed boarding, because the school was only 15 minutes away, but I fought for full-time boarding in order to learn English, Braille, French, and every other academical subject that came my way. And I'd cleared my GCSEs, but there was something missing, wasn't there? Because being from a country where, cricket was where we eat, sleep, repeat cricket, there was something missing. I used to kick a ball around at school, but we suddenly had a flow of Australian teachers come into school, and one teacher, Tim Richmond, just started playing cricket with me after school, during school, and I thought, wow, this is not the cricket that that's played in Pakistan. This is different. You've got a big size 3 football, and they're bowling over arm. You're being bowled 2 bounces, and you're trying to smash it as far as you can, and then you can catch the ball on the bounce. And so it is different. But what can you actually do with it? Well, what I could do with it was actually play for a club. But never did I really imagine that there was a club in London that existed until my PE teacher said, well, look, there's a club called Metro Blind Sport. They're looking for young, enthusiastic cricketers. They're going to call 4 of you for a trial. And, well, I'd never been outside my home. I was this sheltered young Pakistani boy who didn't even know how to make a cup of tea, let alone head out onto the Northern Line to go to Highgate to play cricket. No way. So I'd had someone come and pick me up from home, take me all the way to Highgate, and then take me to this trial. Now, I'm someone very arrogant, proud, call it what you will, but I was very proud even at that age. I said, well, you know what? I don't care. Next time, I will be traveling on my own. And that was my target. But even then, I thought, well, there won't be a next time, because how can you actually make it through this club? And I turned up, right? And you know this now because you've met the Metro lads. Back then, it was a different kind of setup, in that you had even older guys. You had 30, 40, 50-year-olds playing cricket at a level I'd never seen. But not only that, they were talking about cricket, life, their lives, their wives. And I thought, wow, this is a different type of education. And I really got to emulate this. I mean, if I don't get into this team, then I can't get anywhere in life, because this is a step up from school. This is raw. This is teaching you how to live. This is pure living skills. A week later, I found myself in the team. Look, I don't really want to bore your viewers and your listeners with a cricket chat, but that day changed my life, because from that day I became an instant, not a success, but an instant independent a B1. A B1 means a totally blind person. That's a category in cricket and other VI sport. I started traveling on my own. I started playing cricket all around the country. I started meeting other blind and partially sighted people who were either in my situation or had passed and cleared university and were working, who had wives and had children. And I just couldn't believe it, because, as you know, I just thought I was going to be this person who was never going to achieve any of this. So 2 years later, they said to me, listen, we would like you to go to Sri Lanka. I said, whatever for? What do you mean you want? I mean, I'd love to go to Sri Lanka for a holiday, but what do you want me to go there for? Oh, well, it's the England blind cricket team. They've invited you to go and play for the England blind cricket team. Um,
I mean,
well,
that's
yeah.
incredible. And you're telling me what, maybe 10 minutes ago, that you were saying if the Queen says you need to leave this country today, I'm not going. And now the country which you've sort of come to almost as a fresh mind, a fresh young boy, has now asked you to play for their national cricket team. I mean, that's absolutely astounding. That really is quite incredible. Tell me about your journey to Sri Lanka. I mean, tell me about the game, but also tell me, what were you feeling? I mean, that's sort of, you've come from a point where you weren't traveling on the Northern Line, let alone getting onto a plane and traveling to play with, you know, really carrying the national burden on your shoulders, essentially. What did that feel like?
Yeah, you put it perfectly. You're so beautiful with your words, and it's exactly that, John. Because
Thank you.
the, um, I'm not flirting. Don't worry. Now the thing is, right? This is what happened. I was the first Pakistani, and was certainly the first Asian player to play for the England blind cricket team, and again turning up at Heathrow, but this time on my own, and getting on a plane and effectively going to a strange country on my own was an eye opener. I know I had teammates, but um, I sat actually alone because I didn't have any friends in that team. I sat alone in that journey, and it was a really really tough tour. I got in quite a lot of trouble, not for being bad, but just for making basic errors. And I just thought I'd never cut it because I was so inexperienced in life more than cricket, and it was really really tough. And I got my cap for the England blind cricket team in that series, and then this led to Pakistan coming over to England. Now, what you had was a great scenario. Within 9 or 10 years, the country that said that he'd be a beggar, suddenly now he's playing for the opposition, the arch army, against them. And it was just incredible. I mean, I had played one match, and this was in preparation for a World Cup. I mean, it was just pinch yourself kind of stuff because you're like, what is happening with you? 9 years ago, you'd given up on life. And now you might potentially be going to Pakistan to play in a World Cup in Pakistan against Pakistan for England. And that's exactly what I found myself doing in 2006. And I remember the Pakistani boys were like, well, I mean, this is incredible. That they all wanted the TV cameras because cricket's huge here. They wanted to interview me, and even though I wasn't the best player, and our lads couldn't believe it. And I remember playing against them, and they were just hitting me so hard in the field. And one of them said in Urdu, he said, "Like, just keep hitting him, mate, because they've got amazing hospitals in England." And I thought, bloody hell! So there was a lot of banter. It was one of the best tours I'd been on. I've had some great opportunities playing for England. Um, I've played in 3 World Cups. I've played in 2 Ashes series. Now, John, do you know what the Ashes are?
I do, but for our non-British viewers, why don't you explain to them?
That's exactly the right answer. So the Ashes is a trophy that's contested between England and Australia, and it goes way back hundreds of years. And it's a trophy that's it's probably the second best to the World Cup. And we played in England in 2012, lost that. And then in 2016, I found myself playing in Australia against Australia and winning the Ashes, which, if you ask any cricketer, it's the pinnacle of their career. It's the cherry on the cake, and you name it, it's everything and more. And in the middle of that, you had the TMS Test Match Special, which is listened to by hundreds of thousands of people in the UK. Radio 4, who do the radio cricket commentary, they wanted an interview with me on my life. And suddenly you've got Jonathan Agnew, Geoffrey Boycott, and these ex-cricketers and now commentators are interviewing me and speaking to me. The Guardian picked up my story, and I'd become this. Well, I hate to say it, and I'm not being smug, but a mini B1 celebrity, and I just couldn't believe it. And I just thought, do you know what? This is the product. This is the product of my dad's hard work, because I've got to say, parents have to commit and give a lot for their children and for their children to succeed in life. But my parents had left a business back home, and from being a middle class background to being, not that we have a lower class background in England, but effectively that's what happened to us. We'd sacrificed a lot, and he'd given up a lot for us to be there, and that was my England career, and that obviously it was a great vehicle to greater things in life, I guess. Everything that we take for granted, employment, living on your own. So this kid who was so scared of sleeping on his own in a room is now living on his own. He's now playing cricket and he's now working, and really that determination came from other people not believing in me.
It's amazing how this sort of like, it's almost like an anarchy. And I'd say, I have something very personal. Growing up, I've mentioned this in previous episodes where I say I grew up in Abu Dhabi, and people say, well, actually, why did you get into visual impairment? And I always say, well, actually, it's because I grew up in Abu Dhabi. It's almost like if life is too easy, you kind of just accept it. Whereas if life challenges you, you kind of just want to go against it and go, well, hey, wait a second. This is just not as accessible as I want it to be. Why is it like this? Let's change things. Sometimes you have to. It's the same with the visual impairment. When someone takes something away from you, it almost sometimes makes you stronger. It makes you sort of appreciate other things a lot more. And I can see that with you, Has, and I can see it with a lot of our visually impaired colleagues. We go to Kershad, for instance. He lost his sight, and here he is inventing such great technology. It's almost like when someone takes something away from you, you want to get it back even more than had you just had it in the first place. And I think that's something so fascinating. I think it represents the determination of our community in general. I mean, we have such an incredible community when you think about it. And speaking of our community, Hassan, actually, you don't just do cricket, but you also do a lot of public engagement. You do a lot of work for our visually impaired communities. Work which has actually been passed on to me. I've met some great people thanks to your introductions, thanks to your connection. I even attended LVIF, the London Vision Forum here, almost 2 years ago now, which is 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. It's crazy how time flies. So tell me about your work in the UK with visual impairment and actually raising awareness for the rest of the community and ensuring our welfare.
Yeah, so look, I'd realized that the country had given me a lot, and I wanted to give something back. So once I'd struggled through university and what have you in life, I started teaching Braille, started teaching English, started to really get involved with a charity called Thomas Pocklington Trust, started working for them, and they had like umbrella organizations, organizations like London, South East London Vision, Elvis, East London Vision. Some of these organizations don't exist now, but I was working with them on various projects, and some of those projects were to improve their social media. But actually, one of the main projects was to work on the ground with VI people, and that whether that's helping them to complete forms, whether that's helping them to to become a bit more tech savvy, or whether it's to organize social events and activities. And for me, it was an incredible journey because I was meeting people who had taken to the seaside, and to you and I that might be very basic. We could just get on a train and go to the seaside, but I remember a lady saying to me, Hassan, thank you so much, because this is my only holiday for the year. Now that's heartbreaking, but that's at the same time heartwarming, because when you think about it, you're giving an opportunity to someone. We think that VI people in England have it all, but they don't, because there are barriers and there are a lot of difficulties, and I think that the work, particularly that Jessica Beale, I have to mention her, and I did at South East London Vision, was incredible, because we helped and empowered a lot of VI people, but also we got involved in a lot of campaigning, and of course you mentioned the LVIF, and we had a lot of guest speakers, and that's how you meet people like yourselves who have they have amazing brains who want to share their ideas with us and with other VI people, and then come up with designs and wonderful things like the cane that you designed once upon a time.
Once upon a time, yeah,
it's not once
still
upon a time,
not long ago, yeah, and another lifetime.
Yeah,
yeah.
and but but honestly, it's been rewarding to give something back. And of course, I was being paid, but just yes, they weren't on the same journey as me, but meeting people who'd lost their sight later on in their lives, and almost being a counselor, almost offering CBT without actually having, any sort of psychologist degree. It was my personal experiences that actually helped me to help other blind and partially sighted people with their emotions as well. Dealing with sight loss is such a tough thing, and I wish there was someone there for me when I lost my sight, and of course there wasn't. So one of the things I love to do in England, and I will, and I'll come back, is to provide that again, because I love it.
I mean, the Thomas Pocklington charity, and actually a lot of the work happening here in the UK, it really is incredible. You have to remember, by the way, that these are all individual initiatives which have all been set up. This is to our viewers out there.
Mhm.
The network of visually impaired people in the UK is absolutely astounding. It's such an intricate network with sort of different regions having their own facilitators for sight loss. And again, I can kind of sympathize with you on that, Hassan, which is, back when I was young, I kind of wish I had, again, growing up in Abu Dhabi, I say that. I kind of wish there was that expertise, or there was that lived experience of visual impairment. You don't have to be a psychologist. You don't have to be someone that's sort of specialized degree level with this, but rather just someone that understands, someone that empathizes, someone that's had a similar lived experience, which is the work that you've done, which, is truly commendable and quite exceptional. And also, as you said, it introduces you to some pretty amazing people. I mean, the funny thing is, you have your own podcast, and you've done Chris Lewis and Chris Mears, the two blind Chris's, on
Yeah.
your podcast. We've done them separately. I'm sure we're going to have one episode one time where it's going to be you, Chris Mears, Chris Lewis, just the whole Metro Blind team. It's so funny what a small world the whole VI community is, but how supportive everyone is of each other. And as you said, it's not, think of it this way, right? Let's talk about the Chris's for a second. They didn't specialize in VI. They're
Yeah.
in telco, but yet
No.
their lived experience of VI has given them such a unique perspective. They didn't have to study psychology. They didn't have to study VI, but they were just so open about their impairment. They sort of accepted it and just nailed it down and did the best that they can with it. As you're doing, as we're trying to do at WeWalk, and that's so powerful. I think getting over that step, as you said, that's sort of this. Instead of letting your eyesight define you, but embracing it and using it to your
Yeah.
advantage to help others. I think that's such a powerful thing, and something which we have to, bring up.
Well, exactly. I mean, when I was
No, go on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I was interviewing both of those Chris's, a lot of my questions were based around sight loss, and it's not that they didn't want to focus on it. It's not relevant to them. Not relevant to them. In what I'm trying to say is that they're just so comfortable with everything they do. They don't think about their sight. I mean, Chris Mears just said to me at the end of the interview, probably one of my most embarrassing moments was when I was taking a walk down, I don't know what street it was in Houston, with Bill Gates. And I just stopped. I said, I beg your pardon? And it was just so nonchalant. And these people in the VI community are phenomenal examples of following and listening to. And you're that example as well, by the way. And I'm not just saying that. You're not paying me for this.
Maybe it's like our viewers are like, wait, does Jean-Marc pay people? Does Jean-Marc pay people on WTALKS to say nice things? Don't blow the cover, Hassan.
He is from Abu Dhabi.
Yes, from Abu Dhabi, yeah, exactly. It's like, don't say
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Has. But like I said, it's the community which makes us stronger. Like if I never found WeWalk, and I know Joe Alfonso, our community manager, is listening to this in the background right now. So I have the power to say whatever I want. No, but I have to say it's people like him.
Yeah, do it.
People in our team, people like him, people
Yeah.
like our co-founding team, our exco team, our product managers. They're the ones that keep us going, right? Like we're a team in the end. It's the people that define you almost. Because look, in the end, if you were visually impaired and you were on your own in the whole wide world, you'd never know what you're capable of. You'd never know what your visual impairment is. But it's the people around you that really are powerful in lifting you up, providing you with that solace, but also making you realize just how severe your visual impairment is in a good way, not in a bad way, but sort of going, okay, this is what I can do. This is what I can't do. This is what others can do. And this is what I aspire to be. It's amazing how the sighted community can also lift you up sometimes. And I think it is incredible. It is incredible.
No, listen, life is a team sport. You decide to play in a team, you play like a team. you'll succeed. You just need the right players around you to go forward and to push that one extra mile. And you surround yourself with good people, like you are doing, then you'll make it in life. You just got to keep searching.
Yeah, for sure. I have a question for you, Has, because
Yep.
you've coached me. You've been an absolutely incredible coach when it comes to cricket.
That's kind.
Yeah. I actually realized I can catch a ball, which was definitely such a refreshing feeling. Like, wow, I can actually, play the sport.
Yeah.
What's it like being a cricket coach? What are the sort of the stories you've had in your time with people with different abilities? Because of course you're B1, but for me, I'm more of a B3. I'm partially sighted. I can still play, and my abilities are so different, but yet you still cope with it. I'm wondering how do you do that? How do you cope with these different abilities? What has been some of your most interesting stories when coaching? What have been like your experiences with teaching so many different cricketers? Because I was B3, so obviously my abilities are so different to yours that you are coaching me as a B1. Like it's amazing how sort of, you know, simple as it is, I have more sight than you, which is a huge gift when it comes to playing cricket. Yet we were both competitively playing each other, which I thought was like incredible, right? It's like a visually impaired guy. You know how people normally sighted people like go crazy when they go, whoa, how did that blind guy do that? And I like as a visually impaired person myself, that's always used to people going, "Whoa, Dion Mark, how do you do that?" I was kind of like to you, "Whoa, Hassan, how do you do that?" So it was one of those. Also, this is not going to go into the recording, but I might say it again. So yeah, sort of tell me about that. Like, how was it like teaching people with so many different abilities?
I think that bit should go in the recording because it sounds perfect. It's exactly how people say it, and it's exactly changing perceptions here. So I'll answer that question. Okay. Well, that's a really interesting question because my coaching, I'm not qualified as such, but from my love of the game, from my experience, from listening, watching, playing the game, I know what people are doing when I'm coaching just by the sounds of their hands, just by the sound of their feet, and the sound of the ball in their hands or on the pitch or on the floor. Um, and of course, when you're coaching anybody, you are hoping that they do what you are asking them to do. And of course, being a B1, I can't see, so I don't actually know that you're doing it right. But if I'm asking you to do a catching drill and you're dropping a lot of catches, I'll actually know whether you're getting hard catches and whether you're getting easy catches just by the sound of the ball and the speed of the ball and where it's hitting you. And by that, I'll be like, well, actually, John, I think you should be catching a lot more than you are. And I said that to you and Prem, there's another Metro guy, when you were catching. And I said, boys, you need to catch a bit more and you need to throw a little bit more direct at each other because I could tell just by the sound of the ball that the catches were going awry.
Mm.
And and similarly with batting, you're teaching someone how to hold a bat. Well, it's like teaching someone how to. I was going to say teaching someone how to fish, but I'm useless at that. But
Just
it's
out of fish,
telling.
such a
So
not as
stupid.
exciting to watch. Not as exciting to watch as
No.
cricket.
Well, people
No,
say that about cricket, to be honest.
really.
Um, teaching someone how to hold a bat, for me, it's basic because I know how it works. And so if you actually copy me or emulate me, then you're in the great position to be able to hit a ball. The rest of it comes down to your listening and your sight. I can advise you, but I can't hit the ball for you. And again, with bowling, I can just give you tips and hints, what to say, what not to say, where your feet should land. A lot of the coaching that I do is obviously verbal, and anything visual I pick up from just listening. And I have actually, so I got two mainstream schools, uh, and I got 60 kids together, and I coached them, and then I got them to play a cricket match against each other. It was pure mental. I mean, it was havoc. And in that instance, I did get a PA or a support worker to actually just watch out for me because there were 60 kids flying about in East London in a school, and I just wanted to avoid accidents. But it's more than possible. Look, you've said it before. If you put your mind, heart, and your soul to it, you can do it. And coaching is not that difficult. You just got
Yeah,
to have the passion for it, haven't you?
exactly. Can I just point out, by the way, how casual you're? It's like, yeah, I just listen out for the ball. I just listen out for when people catch it. That's just like a general thing.
Oh, wait,
That
am I coming
blows
across
mine.
arrogant? Am I
No,
coming across arrogant?
no,
Because
no, no. You're blowing my mind. Here's the thing. I don't want to point this out. And right. So you know how visually, like you know how normally sighted people,
yeah,
sometimes comes like you know they've come up to me for instance, right, and they go, again, I'm gonna sound so arrogant when I say this, but they go, whoa, Jean-Marc, how do you do that? Like, oh, you work on cars, oh, you play guitar, wow, and he's
yeah,
visually impaired, wow. And I was like, oh, come on, guys, like it's nothing, you know, I can still do this, I still have some sight, you know. But you know, they go wow at you, and you're just so used to it. I was in that position with you where I was like, wow, Hassan, you could do that? Like I'm visually impaired myself, so I know what it feels like. And yet I'm still mind blown at like how you're being visually impaired and can still do that as well. And I think that's like the most wholesome thing in the world. Like when you have just a bunch of visually impaired people to
yeah.
each other for once going, wow, you could do that. Because you never realize it, you know, when sort of normally sighted people come up to you. But anyway, um, so yeah, so you always kind of go, well, I never understand where normally sighted people do that. Like, yeah, okay, I'm visually impaired, but you know, I know my own abilities. I don't think about playing guitar or like fixing cars and stuff. But it almost makes it feel so wholesome and so nice when you kind of do that to your own fellow visually impaired colleagues, where you're mind blown at their visual impairment and what they're capable of doing. I don't know. I just found it so freaking cool. So yeah, and also Has, sort of moving on from cricket, you also used to do football at Brixton with with some of the Metro guys. Tell me about that. You know, is there what's the you know the skill shift here? You know, what was that like?
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, I went to someone's house, a VI player plays for Metro, and I was borrowing his phone, and he said, "Oh well, I'll just wait for my partner to come home." Um, and I said, "Well, it's okay. I know how to take out a SIM." And he was genuinely shocked that I knew as a B1 how to take out a SIM out of an iPhone. And I'm sure the next time he'll do it himself. And that's what it's all about. We're teaching each other. We're not showing each other up. We're teaching each other, because there are skills that you have that I don't, and there'll be skills that I have that you might not, and then we just pass them on to each other.
Yeah, can you imagine it? Like, what type of flexing context is that? Contest is that? You just go up to a blind person as a visually impaired person. You're like, "Hey,
Oh
man,
no.
I'm blinder than you, man. Like, I'm blinder than you. I can do this with my visual impairment." No, but I think that's really is quite amazing. You also did football at Brixton, you know, and obviously that's very different to the skills in cricket. How was that shift? You know, what's different in that sport? Are people's mindsets different, or is it the same principles?
Listen, so VI sport, you have different mentalities, different skills, but the same mindset in that you knuckle down and you learn that skill and you do it. So you can't compare the two games because football is a total different sport. Football, VI football, is you're playing with B1 football, you're playing with other B1s. It's a five-a-side, so you have four B1s, and the keeper is sighted. Whereas in cricket, you have three categories: B1, totally blind; B2, someone who can see up to 5 degrees; B3, someone who can see up to 20 degrees. The game is different. You're socializing, playing, empathizing with different categories of players in cricket. Whereas in football, you're all on the same level, and it all then comes down to man to man or woman to woman skills, ability to listen, ability to play the game of football, but just with your ears.
It's amazing. I know. I say this on all the podcasts. It's like the most cliche word that you can say, but you know, I can vouch for this. You know, being someone that was sort of sucked into this weird and wonderful world of VI sports, it is one of the most exhilarating things you can ever do. Because in school, and I went to a normally sighted school, you were always like, you know, I was lucky to have sight, so I could kind of do football and stuff. And I really got into running for that reason. But all other team sports, I was like, I know that I'm never going to be as good as these guys, even though I might be able to run faster than some of them. And it was like kind of like not like like not like the I don't want to use the word depressing. Like no, it wasn't. It was motivational. But it was a bit of a downer when you're like, I know I'll never be as good as a team. Whereas with VI sport, because you're all by virtue on an equal playing field, and because the rules have really been thought out, like blind cricket, the rules are amazing. Like, you know, someone's actually sat down and thought this through. You're not just sort of playing cricket and hoping that someone catches
No,
the ball. People are
no.
genuinely fast, they're effective, it's competitive, you know, it's a fast paced sport.
Yeah, if you take my story 17 years forward to now, I play for Metro, and then Metro Devils, I captain them. So I've got a 15 uh, guys and girls that I actually take across the country on my own to play in matches. Not only that, I actually have to captain them on a field, and it's different to football because in cricket you have to do almost everything: pick a bowler, pick a batsman, see where they're standing, and again, seeing where someone is standing when you can't see. Well, it's nigh on impossible, obviously. But again, I do it with something called echolocation. So I'll click and then I'll think, oh yeah, that's a silly mid-on fielder. Now I'm not going to bore you with the fielding names, but that's someone who stands really close to the bat trying to catch the ball, and I'll use the echolocation to pick out my fielders. It's knowing what works for you, John, and that's the crucial bit.
Exactly. And I would 100% wholeheartedly, anyone in the UK, and it's not just in the UK for Metro, but anyone across the world, there is going to be an initiative near you that's going to give you access to this sport. It is exhilarating. Sure, the first time might be a bit daunting. You might be like, what am I going to go do here? Like, this is the first time I've ever joined this team. But the people there love meeting new people, at least from my experience. I mean, here, look, we met Hassan, and look where this has gone. So literally just from meeting up one day because Chris Lewis told me about Metro Sport and cricket. We met up, we had a great time. We made this great connection. You came to my PhD experiment, even like all from one person saying, hey, do you want to try out this sport? Isn't that amazing? Like just how receptive the whole team is, how sort of this sense of community. So anyone out there, 100% would recommend getting, even if it's just getting in touch with myself to discuss sport, getting in touch with our team. Yeah, that amazing sense of community. And we send out our W News, quite often. We talk about sports and these extracurricular activities, and we want our community first and foremost to realize that, hey, just because you're VI doesn't mean you can't do crazy stuff like catch balls and play cricket and play football. And I think Hassan is the perfect testament to that. Like honestly, I will say this: an icon to visually impaired sports, and to just getting off your butt and doing something about it. And I think that's going to be the motto. That's going to be the motto for this episode. Every episode, I want like an ending to have a motto, and it's just get off your butt, do it. Go play some sport if you wanted to. Like you can do it. It's been done for you. Hassan, thank you so much for being on the show with me. Honestly, it's been. I mean, what else can I say? A truly incredible story. Such a unique perception. Growing up in Pakistan, playing playing in a team against your own country. I think that's hilarious. It's been a real pleasure, Hassan.
No, thanks so much for your kind words. It's an honor. It's a pleasure serving, but also being involved and included in the community. I hope to come back in January and pick up where we left from because it has been a dark, dark year. And guys, we know the next few years are going to be tough in terms of picking ourselves up, but pick ourselves up we must. Because the other alternative, the other option is dim, dark, and horrible. And I've been down that road of depression and isolation. Let's not do it. In 2021, let's make a motto to be together. And if we're together, we'll be better together. Oh, wait, no. If we're together, we'll be better. So whether it's playing a sport, or whether it's learning how to play the guitar, just get out there when we're allowed to do so. Look, guys, it's been a pleasure. I love you all, and see you soon.
Take care, everyone. Have a good one.